Meeting to order, MPO Policy Committee. Meeting and date, May 21st, 2025, 1:30 p.m. Chairperson, call roll, please.
Yes, Mayor Dr. Victor Trevino, I'll go ahead and call roll. Chairperson and Mayor Dr. Victor D. Trevino,
Present.
Judge Tano E. Tijerina,
Present.
Councilmember Ricardo Rangel, Councilmember Ruben Gutierrez,
Present.
Commissioner Jesse Gonzalez, Commissioner John Galo, Councilmember Vanessa Perez, Mr. Epigmenio Epi Gonzalez,
Present.
Mr. Jed A. Brown.
Present.
Sure, you do have a quorum.
Thank you.
Motion to excuse members that are missing.
Second. Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Proceed with citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments today?
There's no comments at the moment.
All right. Then we'll proceed with item number 4, items requiring policy committee action. A, approval of minutes for the meeting held on April 16, 2025.
So moved.
Motion? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. B, discussion with possible action to approve resolution number MPO 2025-07 supporting and adopting the 6th version of the Laredo Transit Management Incorporated LTMI Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, PTASP, and Safety Performance Target for calendar year 2025, and to incorporate the Metropolitan Planning process.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is presented every year. So our transit agency at Metro conducts a safety plan every year, and they have to update those safety targets as per FTA requirements. Part of that process is that we also approve those targets and incorporate them into our planning process, the different documents that we provide. This document and the targets have also been presented to the Laredo Mass Transit Board and were approved by them. Now we're bringing them to this committee for your review and approval. We recommend approval of the item.
All right,
So
thank you.
moved. Second.
Motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Number C, discussion with possible action to provide a letter in support of the City of Laredo's grant application to the Texas Parks and Wildlife 2026 Local Parks Grant Program for the Las Lomas del Sur Park project.
Thank you, Mayor. This item came through the city's Economic Development Department. They're applying for a grant for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Local Parks Grant Program. This is for the Lomas del Sur Park project. Staff recommends approval because it aligns with our active transportation plan. They'll be adding trails as well that support active transportation in our community.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Does this, excuse me,
Go ahead.
discussion, does this go through, city council as well, or just the MPO?
So the support letter is through the MPO, but to submit the application, it has to go through City Council. So I know there's a representative here also from the Economic Development Department. If you do have any questions,
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no.
It was just coming to us, or it had actually gone to the city council first?
they're coming to us just for a support letter. So the City Council action would be to actually apply for the grant.
All right.
That'd be
Just making sure, that's all.
Did you want to give some comments?
No, just, if you have any questions, I have a brief presentation, you all want to see it. It's for the park.
Yes, name for the record, please.
I'm Ortiz, Economic Development.
Thank you.
So this is, like I said, we're asking for a letter of support. This item did go to council, it passed. We're just asking the MPO for a letter of support. Just a little overview, we are requesting a total of 1.5 million. It does ask for a 50-50 match, so the city will be putting up 750,000. Which 500 will come from district priority funds for District 1 and 250 from park improvement fees from the area. Grant deadline is August 1st of 2025. They usually announce awards in January, so this time around it would be on January 2026. And the proposed project is to build approximately 2.5 miles of walking trail. We are applying for these 1.5 million for phase one. So phase one is just a half a mile of those 2.5. The overall project does call for 5 pedestrian bridges. This phase one is, only includes 1 pedestrian bridge. It does include 3 youth soccer fields and 1 regulation size soccer field, 1 inclusive playground, a regular playground, picnic tables, benches, 32 parking spaces, and a restroom. This is the whole master plan of what we have now. It does go all the way from Warmser Road to Bianca Road. That's the whole master plan. Phase one does include just the center section. It'll, as you can see, there's an inclusive playground at the top, regular playground at the bottom, 32 parking spaces at the bottom. It wasn't including in the master plan, but it does include restrooms. Our budget does allow for restrooms. There's a walking trail all around the pond area, and you can see the regulation soccer field and 3 youth soccer fields. And up here would be the pedestrian bridge.
If I may,
Yes, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir.
I'm just curious, you keep referring to phase one, how many phases are there?
So we do plan on breaking it down to 3 phases. The middle portion would be phase one. Phase two would be the top portion all the way to Wormser Road. And the third phase would be from where the parking lot is all the way down to, I wanna say it's, Molina Middle School? I wanna say, I'm not sure the name of the middle school, but there's a middle school down where the trail ends.
So do you have, I guess, and I don't know anything about this, I know this is the city's initiative, but I was just curious on what's the total cost? Is it already out there, for all phases of 3 phases?
I wouldn't have the cost for phase 2 and 3, but phase 1 did come out to a little bit under the 1.5 million,
Okay,
which would be this area right here.
thank you.
All right.
And here I just mentioned really quick how the park ties up to the MTP and the active transportation plan. It promotes active transportation, connectivity. It complements the Vision Zero initiative. It supports equitable development, and it supports the regional mobility and land use development. I'm sorry. And here are just the current pictures of what the current area looks like.
So, you said something about 5.5 million, is that correct?
1.5 million.
No, but in your initial talking points, did you say something about 5 something?
No.
Okay, then I
So
misunderstood.
the cost that we have right now is a little bit under 1.5 just for phase 1.
I got that part, I don't know why, for some reason I thought you said 5 something, so I was just trying to break it up in my brain for the next phases, that's all.
No, it's okay. And like I said here, pictures of how the current area looks like. And I don't know if y'all have any other questions I can help answer.
Thank you so much,
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Any other questions?
Ready, Mayor?
All right, thank you.
I believe have the motion passed already. Yeah.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
All right. Next, number 5, reports and presentation, no action required. A, status report by Regional Mobility Authority, RMA.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the MPO Policy Committee. Jed Brown with you all. We have in your packet, like you find each month, each item or project that we're working on listed there. We try and provide it in advance. If y'all want to read through it and you have questions, we're always here to answer them. 2 of the bigger projects we're working on would be the Vallecillo project and the Vision Zero Safe Streets for All. Vision Zero has a meeting tomorrow with TxDOT, the RMA, and the City of Laredo to visit about that project. In continuance of it, we have an application due next month for implementation funds. We're hopeful that that particular item will actually be on the City Council agenda June 2nd. I know that we're all trying to come up with money to fund that initiative, that project, and we're I was told by Assistant City Manager Ramon Chavez that he and city management will be working with council to try and identify where the money would come from to fund that portion. The RMA is willing to kick in monies, and TxDOT has projects on their list. So within a week or so, we're gonna try and figure out how we're gonna move into the implementation part. But we do need the mayor and council's help to come up with some monies. The way I look at it is for each $100,000 the city spends, you get $800,000 from the federal government. So it's not a bad deal. It's a good way to leverage dollars. With us putting $100,000, you all putting in $100,000, we get $800,000. And there's a number of projects picked. I think it's between 18 and 20 all around our community, all across. I think every district has a project in it, but I think it's really good that we move forward on implementation. If we don't want to do the full list, we pick the ones we want to go after and we make those improvements. As far as Vallecillo, we had a meeting yesterday, our quarterly meeting. Juan was there, well represented, the county was there, they had a presentation, the RMA had a presentation, TxDOT had a presentation. So that project's moving along. Every month you see in your packet an update on where the RMA is with our portion of the project. And then Springfield Phase 4. You can see it's almost done. I passed it yesterday. The TxDOT's had their portion done a long time ago, and the city is racing through theirs. I think they're ahead of schedule, so that road should open, I think, in a matter of weeks. We had a meeting last week on Concord. That's a really important project for South Laredo. I believe the 3 property owners that need to donate their right-of-way are real close to making that conveyance so that that project can kick off not too far off. I'm told that the design is almost done, but I would think that's 2 to 3 months before that project can break ground. So if there's any specific questions you all have of me, I can answer them. If they're really hard questions, I'll ask our consultant to come up and answer them.
All right, go ahead.
Just wanted for clarification's sake, you said for every 100,000, there's 800,000 that's.
The way it works is it's a 20% match. So if you take $1 million, if we ask for $1 million,
200,000.
right, but 100 from the RMA and 100 from the city covers the 200. So then the 800,000 is the federal government. Is that?
He painted that picture really well, in other words.
That was clear as mud what I said. If let's say in this program, if you ask for $1 million, you have to put up, oh, that's 200, excuse me. Yeah, my math didn't add up.
That's what got me confused, because, give me a second, for every 100,000, you said 800,000, for 200,000, that's 1.6.
No, it's because I was counting our 100,000 in. I was counting our 100,000 to get to the 20%. In other words, if, let's say.
I think it's great, I'd put it all day long, I'm just trying to get clarification.
Okay, and I'll try again. If this doesn't make sense, I'll ask somebody that maybe understands it to explain it. I see you, Councilman, there, but if we ask for $1 million of implementation dollars,
It's 200,000.
it's 200,000. The RMA kicks in 100, the city kicks in 100.
Okay, so
That's to where we get the 200. So I was assuming with the city putting in 100, we're matching it.
I got you now. Yeah, I got you.
Sorry.
The 800,000 is what's lacking from the 200,000.
But I'm glad you asked that question, because I was gonna give the same sales pitch at city council, and they may have the same confusion.
It's
So
just-
I was just trying to say, for every
It's
100
just
you
me
put
and my
in,
brain,
you'll
that's
get
just the way I work, I'm just trying to make it work in my brain.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, yes, sir,
And we look forward to discussing it at City Council.
thank you.
All right. Letter B, presentation by the Goodman Corporation on the micro transit feasibility study, overview and recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor. We've been working with Metro on this microtransit study, a feasibility study with our consultants, the Goodman Corporation. They did present to the Mass Transit Board on Mondays, at Monday's City Council meeting, or Mass Transit Board meeting. We do have a representative from the Goodman Corporation here to present. Like I mentioned, we've been working very close with RJ Galsa and his team out at Metro. The idea here is that we want to provide additional transit service in Laredo, right, complement the fixed route services. So I'll go ahead and let Monisha with the Goodman Corporation give the presentation.
All right. And for the record, just to announce that Councilwoman Vanessa Perez is present. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. Let me just make sure the presentation is showing on the screens, because there's been a little delay with the presentations. It's up on your screen.
Yeah, it's on my screen.
There you go. Now it's ready.
There we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Manisha Krana with the Goodman Corporation, and as Juan mentioned, I'll be presenting today about the microtransit feasibility study. Thank you so much for having me. And letting us present about our findings. So, just to give a brief overview, El Metro runs a fixed route service currently. It runs 7 days a week. There have been some circulator routes that have been implemented in the last few years. Those run on weekdays. One of them runs on Saturdays. The system overall is a hub and spoke system with nearly all of the routes coming into the transit center in downtown. El Metro also runs the paratransit service called El Lift. This is for people with disabilities who are unable to use the fixed route system. That system operates within 3/4 of a mile of the fixed route system, and it provides curb-to-curb service and shared ADA accessible vehicles. Microtransit, if it's introduced here, would be another transit mode that would complement these services. To talk a little bit about microtransit, it's a shared on-demand service that operates within defined zones, and that's the key. The trips must start and end within a particular area. It's less capital intensive than fixed route. It's much more simple to change the zones or be responsive to rider patterns and requests. It can allow for increased accessibility and coverage. Oftentimes it'll provide an improved rider experience because there's the ability to reach more destinations with less waiting time. People can get picked up and dropped off closer than the fixed route. Generally it's technology based, so it'll work on an app. There's also the ability to have a phone call to schedule the rides, and that can be done on the same day. So again, more flexibility for riders. The vehicles that are used for microtransit, those are often like a small bus, or it could be like a minivan. A portion of these need to be ADA accessible. It differs from Uber or Lyft in that it's a shared service, and the trips must start and end within a particular area. One thing I'd also like to note is that we did a review of various planning efforts that have been done in this region over the last few years, and microtransit would help achieve some of these regional goals for mobility and sustainability. As part of our study, we looked at some other agencies that are currently implementing microtransit. We wanted to understand what are some lessons there and what are some considerations in implementing microtransit here in Laredo. We picked 7 agencies. 4 of these are located in Texas, and 3 of them are also border communities. We conducted some phone interviews with these agencies to understand some of their challenges and some lessons learned. As you can see here, there's really a wide variety of the number of zones that they have, the cost, and and wait times. Something about these agencies as well is that a lot of them are turnkey operations. And what that means is there's a third party that runs their whole system. Austin and Tulsa in particular, they use their own vehicles, but they do have a contractor that helps with the technology side of things. And so a lot of these programs, they started off as pilot programs, and then they expanded over a series of years. Some of them started to replace some poorly performing fixed routes, and so there's definitely some lessons and experiences that can be learned from these agencies. For Laredo, we developed 5 zones, and to do so, we looked at the lowest performing fixed routes, and those are the 3 circulator routes, C1, C2, C3, as well as the 8. All of these carry fewer than 6 passengers per hour. One thing that I'd like to note is that these areas all do have a transit need, but for some reason, these routes are not resonating with the riders. And there's a number of reasons. It could be the alignment of the route itself, it could be the frequency, it could be the pedestrian connections, or some combination of these items. And to really understand why they're not being effective, we would need to have stock level data, and that's not something that's collected by El Metro right now. So for purposes of this study, we just looked at these routes in these areas in aggregate. In developing these zones, we had a few key considerations. The first is the size. We wanted to keep them to be about under 10 square miles to keep wait times reasonable. We wanted to ensure a variety of land uses, and we wanted to ensure that there's like a Target, an H-E-B, or a Walmart in each of these zones. And most importantly, we wanted to make sure that each zone has a connection to the broader El Metro system, so that a rider would be able to transfer from the microtransit service to another fixed route. And we want to make sure that these systems, microtransit and fixed route, complement each other. Just talk very briefly about some of these zones. Zones 1 and 2 are located in the northern part of Laredo. These ones have industrial land uses. This is an interesting use case for microtransit. We spoke with some folks as part of this study to understand how microtransit could help alleviate some tractor-trailer congestion. We understand that there's drivers that are driving around when they're not working to reach essential services and grocery stores, and implementing microtransit in this zone would allow for this use case. These are where the C1 circulator runs, and again, if that is eliminated, there is definitely opportunities for riders to commute into the fixed route system. Zone 3, that's on the west side of Laredo, and that's where the C3 runs. Zone 4 is on the east side, that's where the 8B runs. Zone 5, this is in the southern portion of Laredo. This is our largest zone. It's where the C2 South Laredo circulator is located. There's a lot of activity centers, a lot of fixed routes that are already here. Through our engagement efforts, we did hear some interest in microtransit in this area, and so that was one of the reasons that we considered this zone. However, implementing microtransit here without doing further data collection or study could have detrimental impacts to the fixed route. So at this time, we do not recommend implementing it over here. For our analysis, we looked at ridership and cost. We looked at internal trips that are traveling within these zones. We tried to figure out how many of those trips would actually be able to use the microtransit. And from there, we assume that when you start off the service, it's going to be a little bit lower, and then your ridership is going to increase as people get more accustomed to the service. We consider a variety of wait times between 10 and 30 minutes, and the total ridership per year is not going to vary based on the wait times, but the shorter the wait time, the more it's going to cost, and the fewer riders per hour you will have. The cost estimate that we use for purposes of this analysis is provided by El Metro. That's $109.19 per revenue hour. Likely microtransit will not cost that much, but that's the number that we had used. This slide presents our projections for ridership and costs over the first 3 years. That's why there's a range here. The wait time is also going to impact the cost. In general, the ridership correlates with the size of the zones and the potential trips, which is also impacting the cost as well. So generally looking at about $1 million for most of the zones, except for zone 3, which is about half of that, and then zone 5, which is about 3 times that amount. And the report has detailed breakdowns with further information. Per El Metro's request, we also considered the idea of late night service, and this would operate after the fixed route system ends and go until 11 p.m. And since there's no fixed route coverage at this hour, we'd have to include the whole city. And so to do so, we split the service area into 2 large zones. The yellow area is a common area, and that would allow for transfers in between the zones. Since it's downtown, it would also serve folks who are crossing the border. Over here, you're looking at implementing both of these together. Unlike the prior zones, you can implement 1 or 2 at a time. Here, this has to be done simultaneously, so the first year cost is just over $2 million. As part of this study, we spoke to a number of people. We reached out to the public and El Metro riders. We had a survey that was published last fall. It was distributed by us and El Metro in person. It was advertised on social media. It was available on the buses and at the transit center. We received 130 responses to our 14-question survey. It asked about people's interest in microtransit, where they'd like to see it, what they'd use it for, and any concerns and thoughts that they might have. We also at this time asked for general feedback on El Metro service as well, and the full survey results are published in the report. We held a public meeting in February. This was at the Transit Center in downtown. We presented our actual proposed zones to the public. And what we were able to ascertain really from all of this feedback is that there is a high level of interest in microtransit. And even if riders personally said that they wouldn't be able to use the service, they were supportive of this mode and thought that it would be of great benefit to Laredo. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to do that. To talk about our recommendations. So right now, El Metro has enough spare vehicles to support a pilot program in-house. They've expressed desire to do so. In the future, there'd be the ability to use non-CDL drivers that would need to be negotiated with the union. Some of these smaller vehicles can also help navigate some of these tight city streets. There's 3 options in considering what to do with the circulator routes. So you can leave the route as is and have microtransit run concurrently. You can truncate the circulator route so that it doesn't go in the microtransit zone, or you can just eliminate this route entirely. If the latter option, sorry, this thing here is, if you go with the latter option, we do recommend running microtransit concurrently for a few weeks, just so that the existing riders become comfortable with the new system. A note about cost, microtransit will only offset a portion of the cost. It's not a one-to-one savings. Our recommendation is to do a two-phased approach here. So the first phase, we recommend piloting 2 zones. That our chosen zones are Zone 1 in North Laredo and then Zone 3, which is on the east side. Zone 1 would allow for a test case of the commercial drivers. The parking and the marketing would need to be sorted out. And Zone 3 is the most compact, and that would be really the easiest to cleanly illuminate a circulator route. For the second phase, we would recommend looking at what's worked well in the pilot and what tweaks need to be made to perhaps those 2 zones, or what are some other lessons that have been learned from this pilot. The next 2 zones we would recommend are Zones 2, which is also in North Laredo, and Zone 4, which is in East Laredo. You could also consider piloting the late evening service at this time. And then finally, we would recommend some further study prior to additional zones, including Zone 5, doing some more data collection to really understand some broader impacts of the fixed route system. Our report has a whole playbook about implementation. We talk about technology, we address transfers. Hopefully, riders of microtransit would be able to have a free transfer to the fixed route so that those 2 systems are able to work seamlessly. And at this time, while the pilot is occurring for microtransit, we recommend keeping L-Lift paratransit as is. One thing I would like to highlight, though, in terms of implementation is marketing. And this is really going to be critical for the service to succeed. There's several ways to get riders accustomed to the service. You can do some travel training, go out, actually ride the route, the circulator route, tell people about microtransit. You can give them some free rides, having some ambassadors to explain the service. For the trucking population, going through employers, some of those trucking associations, and word of mouth will also be important. In terms of funding, so FTA considers microtransit a demand responsive service. You can utilize some existing funding sources. For late night service, there's the ability to maybe contract some of those out to the private sector. For performance indicators, a lot of these are similar to your fixed route, but you would want to track shared rides. And then since microtransit is a flexible mode, there's different things that El Metro can do to adjust the service based on the performance and how things are going. So overall, we believe that microtransit would be a good addition to Laredo. It would help complement your existing fixed route and paratransit service while also creating an improved rider experience and increasing your coverage.
Mayor? Yeah, I do have a question. The pickup zones and the drop-off zones are specific to whatever zone is being used, or is it, do they pick them up on different sites?
Correct. So within a zone, you can be picked up and dropped off anywhere within that zone. To get from one zone to another, you need to transfer to the fixed route.
All right, okay, thank you.
Mayor, question, please. A couple of questions. Thank you, of course, for the presentation. Again, appreciate it. Do you have a percentage of when microtransit comes into a city, what the percentage of it is successful after the grants are over? Because I've heard there's a pretty high rate of fail after the federal grant is over. Is this a federal grant or it's not?
So, Arthur, do you want to answer that? But I guess in terms of success, I think that it really depends on how you define success and what the goals of the service are. And so there's definitely ways to scale back the microtransit or adjust the parameters. So I don't know if there's a metric.
Well,
of-
success for me would be obviously lowering the cost for our consumer and them utilizing it. Because if they're not utilizing it, it's not saving us any money, there's no reason to bring it in. That would be success to me, right? Want to make sure ridership is there. If it's not there, then why keep it? And want to make sure it's a lower cost for the consumer.
Right, so in terms of fare for the consumer, we would imagine that the fare is similar to a fixed route. So it'd be about $2. So for the consumer, the cost would be the same for microtransit versus fixed route, but microtransit can provide an improved experience because there's more flexibility, there's more coverage, you can get picked up closer to where you want to go and where you're living or where your origin point is.
And as far as its funding, it's coming from?
So you can utilize existing funding. I'll let RJ take that one.
Yeah, no, and so there is different funding that we can use, right? FTA funding for sure, probably for capital funding. But then there's also the operational side, and I think that's maybe what you're alluding to, right? How do we operate this? I think the idea is, maybe like the circulators that they're recommending to be eliminated, you're gonna have some cost savings there as well. So it's not really bringing in entirely new service, you're kind of, trading for that,
One for the other.
yeah, one for the other in a way, right? It depends on what zone, there's some differences because of the cost that it's costing right now. Like was mentioned, we use that 109, per hour cost, but really we think microtransit is a lot cheaper than that. You saw the other communities, the case studies, they were under 109. So, I think really it's first finding the money for capital for extra vehicles, but like they mentioned, there are some vehicles we got started with, and identifying where we can get the money to operate, right? There's different funding sources. Even a stretch, I know our category 7 money is tied here, but even a stretch, you could pilot something with those type of funds, because you could also use that for transit capital projects.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garza, is this gonna affect your budget at all? Because obviously you're gonna need staff, operation. So-
RJ Garza for the record, Transit Director. Good question. Our plan is not to increase the budget at all. We're gonna find ways to have an action plan to where it's pretty much a wash. That's what our plan is, introducing ways on what we could eliminate that's unperforming as far as routes, and then introduce microtransit. And microtransit can be used where we can't serve right now. Like, as you know, we have the fixed route and the L-lift. The on-demand transit or microtransit is on-demand. And so we can service higher areas or different areas as the city's growing. For instance, mile marker 13 is a good example. There's areas that have been growing in the south side. There's a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of houses. I kind of want to have Oscar Gomez come here and explain as a specific example how the service could really benefit a lot of people that we can't serve right now, just because of the modes of transit that we have available. But this would open up, we wouldn't be competing against others. I know it's very similar to the Uber and Lyft and maybe even taxi, but this is a shared ride.
Right.
And we would service specific zones. And then if we offered late night at some point, late night service, then we would go and split the city in 2 zones, and we could service the whole area. But I wanted Oscar Gomez to come and just share a specific example that he'd like to discuss.
Yes, hi, Oscar Gomez, Marketing Manager for Metro.
Go ahead.
So yes, this program's actually, it's not, a lot of people think it's very similar to the taxi and Uber. The reason it's different, it's by zones. So each district is divided by different zones. So for example, perfect example right now, it's a Cuatro Vientos area in South Laredo. They have this new developed area, which is Bright Ranch and Los Presidentes is, all that area, it's brand new. And the last bus stop that we have in that area will be at Bonnie Garcia, which is like 3 miles from all this area. It's growing a lot. So with the microtransit, what's gonna help a lot is we're gonna be able to provide service within that zone. So for example, if parents need to go, they just open a doctor's hospital emergency room as well. All those areas will be able to be serviced through microtransit. And it's like not competing against taxis or Uber, because the reason is that these people would have to just travel within their zone, or if they're gonna go to another zone, they would have to get a transfer to a transfer point. But it's a pretty good example because Laredo's growing and our service is limited to where we have transportation right now. So having this type of system would open and have more accessible transit for everyone in the community.
Thank you, appreciate
No
it.
problem.
If I may,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you for this. I noticed on the map that the majority of the, I guess, less user area is pretty much my whole district. And so listening to the philosophy of this plan, it sounds like it's more of a build it and they'll come type model, but that doesn't really work these days. And so I'm glad that you brought up the marketing, but if we're going to provide the service at like a minimal level and then hope that as ridership increases, provide a better service, it almost seems like we should do the opposite, because we want to put our best foot forward, show people what they could rely on, And then they would start selling their cars maybe and using more of this like public transportation. The problem right now is that we put up a route together. I mean, we're talking about eliminating the Green Ranch circulator. Before I came in office, that area didn't even have public transportation. And now we want to say that the ridership is low. But the thing is, you don't service on Sundays. People, there's not late drop-offs. So those people, they can't go anywhere on Sunday if they don't have their own vehicle. It's very far out of town. And it's like, how are people supposed to accommodate to a micro-transit lifestyle when we're not giving them like the tools up front of what this service could be if we're only starting off like limited, hoping that as ridership comes in, we'll provide like less wait time, expanded hours, things like that. That's part of the problem, I think, especially if you look at the area. If we're gonna talk about cutting like less used routes, maybe we should look at the reason why people aren't, adopting into the public transportation system. So I appreciate the microtransit for like accommodation and addition to what we're doing, but I don't feel like it's gonna solve the bigger issue. And so it's, when we're thinking about what to put funding in, like Councilman Gutierrez brought up, why do we want to invest in something that's going to be unsuccessful because our philosophy and our implementation didn't really provide people a reason to buy into the product to begin with? That's kind of how I look at it. Like, and I understand what you're saying, but it just, is there a way that we could look at how to implement it where they're going to get the best experience and what that would cost? Without having to kind of say, well, it's only gonna be 2 million and then like eventually we'll build up to it, cause then what if those riders never come?
Right, so the idea, so what we looked at is we considered a variety of wait times. And so in the report, you can see that we have the cost for each zone. So if you provide a 10-minute wait time, that's gonna be more expensive, but you could go ahead and start off providing that level of service. And so, the reason that we picked some of these areas in particular is because we know that there's a transit need, but there is a circulator or there's a fixed route that's not working as effectively. So microtransit could provide a different type of service there that would perhaps be more effective. And then I think RJ.
But if we put that service, right, and then we don't do a good job marketing it, and then if we do market it and get them to try it, they say, oh, well, I need to go somewhere at 10 o'clock at night. By the time the bus gets here, it's already too late. They don't service this time, or I have to be there at 8 o'clock for the bus to come at 9, because we know that we have long wait times at some of these places. There's a lot of factors going on here. So that, again, if you're just gonna look at ridership and then say, we recommend this and eliminate this route or things like that, it just doesn't seem like, maybe we're looking at it holistically, like bigger picture.
And that's just an example. We're gonna come back with an action plan and some options. And this is the cost associated with those options. And we will be contacting the federal government to find, because in our understanding from HTG, the feds will allow a pilot program for up to 3 years. So there's funding there, right? We can commingle this with our LIFT program to use that particular grant for operating expenses.
Mayor, if I may?
Okay,
go ahead.
Well,
we have identified capital funding that we currently have for a certain amount of units, but we need to be able to identify how many units do we need to satisfy X, Y, and Z as a whole.
Mayor, if I may?
Go ahead.
So you're saying that there's money available to do a pilot, right? And if we launch this pilot and it's successful and people buy into it and we get the ridership
Yeah.
after the 3 years, then the program would sustain itself without the grant.
3 years.
I think that's what we need to do, because sometimes when we get money, we spread it around and we kind of but it doesn't really give a good, effect, or, because I think it's good to put it in, initially, like a good, efficient experience. I think that's what will lead more people to buy in.
And don't get me wrong, we are implementing things as far as a Metro that we haven't introduced to you guys yet. But we will in the next couple of weeks. We will be launching out ribbon cutting ceremony for 19 new buses that we just purchased. And we're gonna be using those immediately after that, ready to go. And so, and there's a lot of new features on those buses from the inside. They're very beautiful, they're very nice. And also, we have a new software system that's gonna be implemented at the same time that will be able to have, passengers identify exactly when the next two buses will arrive at their bus stop. We're gonna make it more efficient, we're gonna educate the public, and we're gonna have the same type of campaigns for the on-demand, because it's gonna be very similar. Once we launch that, and they'll be able to sit at whatever bus stop, and each bus stop will have an ID number. They can call that number, text the ID, and it's gonna give them the next buses that are coming their way at what time, how many minutes for each unit. And so it's gonna be different. We're already training all our staff, our dispatchers. They know exactly where the buses are at, if they're on time, early, late. They'll be able to help the drivers stay on time, making it more efficient. There's a lot of things that are going on, but the microtransit is just gonna help complement that. And we can introduce ways on what it would take to make it, the whole system at the same time. Because I love that idea. I think, and we think that's really the way to go. But it's a cost factor, right? Right now, they stated earlier, our cost right now per operating expense is $110. With implementing on-demand service, we have agencies that are operating at $65 an hour, just with on-demand, right? And so we can also partner with Uber, Lyft, or a taxi service and do an MOU agreement. So maybe offer evening hours with them and say, hey, you know what? You give us a cost per hour and we'll pay you as long as it's lower than our $65, we'll pay you, and that's cost per hour. So we can do a lot of different things with this program. I just want to share that.
Thank you.
With you.
Awesome.
All right. Okay.
Thank you,
Well,
Mark.
thank you very much for the opportunity to work with you
Thank you very
guys.
much.
We
Thank you for the
appreciate it.
information. Appreciate it.
I did email everyone the report, and they're gonna summarize the feedback that they received, and then we'll send out the full final report again. Thank you.
Very good.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
With your permission, I'd like to be excused. I see we have a quorum plus one, and I've got another meeting I need to get to,
Yes.
but we still have a quorum.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
By the way, TxDOT, your presentation that's here to happen, I've seen it before. It's good, so I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you.
All right. Next is letter C, presentation of a text dot on the FM 1472 segment 1 feasibility study.
Thank you, Mayor. Roberto Rodriguez from TxDOT is gonna help introduce presenters today.
Yes, good afternoon, Roberto Rodriguez with TxDOT. TxDOT hired a consultant, NTEC, out of Houston, Texas, to do a feasibility and a schematic on one of the segments on FM 1472. Mr. Roger Gonzalez is the project manager. He'll be presenting for us today.
Thank you, Roberto. Again, my name is Roger Gonzalez. I'm with NTEC Civil Engineers. I am the PM on the consultant side for the project. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of y'all for allowing us to be here to give this presentation to you on the feasibility study for FM 1472. I'd also like to go ahead and introduce the district team we're working with on this project. I'd like to start off with Mr. Gonzalez, the district engineer, Roberto Rodriguez, who is the TP&P director. We also have Luis Vidalia, district design engineer, and our project manager, Adriana Munoz, who's here with us also today. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and jump right into this. 1472 is divided up into two separate segments. It runs from I-69 all the way to 255. So there's two different consultants working on this project. The one that we're going to focus on today would be segment 1, which runs from I-69 up to about 2 miles north of 3338, which is the more developed segment of the entire corridor. It's approximately 7 miles in length, and as you know, it has a lot of development, a lot of truck traffic going through there. So the study was, a feasibility study was actually started back in late summer. We started with the existing conditions, went into identifying what the needs and the goals are for the project, but we also then developed conceptual alternatives. Along the way, we've had public meetings that was held earlier this year with the public. But in addition to that, we've also had stakeholder meetings with some of the major stakeholders in the area and some of the elected officials for this region. In the spring of this year, we provided or presented viable alternatives to the public and hoping to have a recommended alternative by end of this summer, which eventually will run into a 30% schematic. Now, keep in mind that this is only a feasibility study, but we are taking it to a 30% schematic, so this project can continue into the future to finish up with a environmental document that's approved, as well as a schematic. And as I mentioned to you, we've had public meetings with the public, and we've had stakeholder meetings along the way. So as part of the existing conditions that we evaluated for this corridor, we identified the number of crash rates and the need for the improvements to resolve some of these crash rates or reduce the crashes along the corridor. We identified that between Pan American Boulevard and Killam, there was 412 crashes, which exceeds the statewide average of 242. But even worse than that, we also identified that between Killam and I-69, we had 976 crashes, which is almost about 3 or 4 times the statewide average. So as you can see, there is a safety issue on this corridor. And there's also, we've driven the corridor, we've seen pedestrians walking along the corridor. It's very unsafe for pedestrians, no sidewalks and pedestrian facilities. But in addition to that, the number of trucks and the crashes that occur along this corridor is concerning. As part of the existing conditions, we also identified the traffic volumes along the corridor. So these numbers that you see here, the bottom number represents the year 2024 traffic volumes, which is basically the existing traffic volumes we're working with today, and projecting those out based on the growth of the region. And as you can see, those vary. For the existing, the low end is about 14,000. On the high end, you're looking at about 51,000, which is closer to I-69. Projecting those numbers forward to the year 2055, we have about 31,000 at the far north end of the project, and on the south end at I-69, we're looking at about 113,000 for the corridor. So that's a lot of traffic. And as you can see here, the projected traffic numbers is just expected to continue to grow. So it's doubling over that time period. So what do we do with those traffic volumes? We use those to develop the level of service. That will give us what the traffic flow is along the corridor, what the capacity needs are along for the corridor. So based on an A, B, C, D, F system, very similar to a grading system, F being the worst, we have identified what the level of service is along the corridor. We also determined what the travel time was for the corridor. If you're starting at the north end, coming all the way to I-69, for example, 2 miles north of 3338, for the existing conditions, 2024, we're looking at about 40 minutes travel time. And this is in the PM period, right? So that's 40 minutes there. For the year 2035, we did an interim between 2024 and 2055. So we took an interim year of 2035. At that point, you're looking at about an hour and a half travel time. And then ultimately, for 2055, you're looking at 3-hour travel time. Of course, nobody's going to sit in traffic, but this is if nothing is done, right? This is based on existing conditions at this time. So as you can see here, the travel time just keeps increasing and increasing. So there's definitely a congestion issue along the corridor. So once we developed all this existing conditions and traffic volumes and so forth, we went to work and developed some of the alternatives for the corridor that were presented to the public. This was one of the preferred alternatives that we presented to the public and that the public kind of favored, which is basically going from I-69 to Killam with 2 elevated structures and putting the access road underneath the elevated structure. By doing this, we can reduce the right-of-way impacts along that corridor, at least between 69 and Killam. Now, if you go north of Killam, you have a much wider right-of-way in that particular area, right? Somewhere between 250 to 300 feet of right-of-way in that area. So with that, we were able to expand that and provide a wider section, as shown here, from Killam going all the way to 3338, going with 3 lanes in each direction for the main lanes, and then going with 3 lanes in each direction for the frontage roads. So this was kind of the preferred alternative from the public. Based on the input from the public and based on the recommendation, we still had more work to do. We had to go back and we had to analyze this in more detail, dive more into the traffic issues along the corridor. So by doing that, we did what we call a VISM analysis, or a simulation of the traffic along the corridor as shown on this image here. So by doing that, we determined that there was still a problem, not so much on 1472, but once you get to I-69, there's a traffic issue there. There's a capacity issue on I-69. And the direct connectors are so close to each other that you have a weaving issue right there on I-69. So we identified this to be a problem. So we went back and we looked and see what else could be done to alleviate the traffic there, to delay any additional widening of I-69 in that particular area. So we started looking at the traffic patterns. Where is all this traffic coming from? Where are the trucks coming from? So what we identified and what we did, we started looking at what we call like an OD study, origin destination study. And we identified that some of these trucks or some of the users of this corridor are starting down here south on I-35, making their way up north, going down to I-69, and they headed up 1472. So we identified what this was. So we came up with some recommendations. And of course, one of them was to improve I-69, but what else could be done? So based on that, we looked at a particular point along the corridor 1472, in this case at Killam, where that 100% represents all the traffic at that particular location, and we identified where that traffic was coming from, okay, based on the origin destination study and traffic patterns. We identified that 33% of that 100% along 1472 originates on I-35 on the south end, okay? And then you have 60% of that traffic also coming from I-69 from the east end, right? And you have 7% coming from the bridge on the west end to make up that 100%. And what happens is that between 1472 and 35, you end up with 93% of the traffic, which is over capacity for that stretch of I-69. Okay, so based on this information, we came up with the idea and evaluated what if we extended 1472 or recommended a extension of 1472 south of I-69. By doing that, we identified that 27% of that 33 will actually go up 1472 from I-35 on the south end all the way up, which reduces that by 27% and leaves 6% on that the I-35 corridor, which also reduces the traffic congestion on I-69 between 1472 and I-69. And with that traffic, 39% of it would actually be going up 1472. Now keep in mind, 1472 already has direct connectors at I-35, right? So it's just a natural sequence for the traffic flow. Now, why isn't that used today? Well, people are going to travel path less resistance, right? So you go down through a freeway, you miss some lights along 1472. But if you were to make that extension a freeway, you would reduce the traffic along I-69, reduce it along I-35, because now they can take a parallel route to the same destination by just going up 1472 as a separate project on the road. We also looked, that's for the existing, we also looked at the 2050 OD study, okay? And what we also did here was now it's going southbound from Killam. The other one was going northbound, this one's showing going southbound. So if you're going southbound, you would have 18% that continues on 1472, 76% of that 100 goes down between 35 and 1472 along I-69, and 25% of that goes down I-35 south. However, if you do that extension, that increases on 1472 from 18 to 49%. So that's a big increase. There's a reduction also of 76 to 44% along that stretch of I-69, okay? And there's also a decrease of traffic on I-35 between 69 and I guess the bridge down south, bridge number 2. So you can see that there is value to looking, or at least considering for the future, an extension of 1472. And Why do we say that? Because we can do all these improvements on 1472 and it runs well, okay? But your problem is going to be here at the interchange. And that interchange is gonna start backing up traffic along the improvements along 1472. We had a video to show you, but it's not compatible with the system. So I apologize for not being able to show you that, but that clearly shows the backup of traffic that's caused by the lack of capacity on I-69. Okay, so, you know, these are our findings. This is what we've been showing TxDOT recently. This is just a week or two old that we put this together, analyze this, and we're still in the study phase of this and looking into this a little bit more, but these are our initial findings that we've come up with and looking at the possible extension of 1472 headed south. Okay, so this corridor, again, this segment one that we're talking about, we've got this broken up into two segments. The segment from Killam going to 3338, which is considered to be the north part of the project, the north segment. This is what the typical section would look like. Be 6 lanes, 3 in each direction for the main lanes, with 3 lanes in each direction on the frontage road. And we're looking at 360 feet of proposed right-of-way, which is 60 feet additional right-of-way from what's out there today. Now, this also includes a SUP, which is for pedestrian use and bicyclists in the area there. So this is kind of encompassing not only vehicles, but also for pedestrians and people who ride bicycles. For segment 2, section 2, which is from Killam going to I-69, this was one of the recommendations. So what we're looking at here is, again, the elevated structures, and this one will have the elevated bridge in the middle, but this one actually shows it going across I-69. Whereas previously I showed you 2 elevated structures, that was before we evaluated the need to extend this across I-69 on the south side. So this is one of the alternatives that we're going to be discussing with the district for the extension of I-69, or at least make provisions for it in the future. The problem is that if you do not look at this at this point, and in the future there's a need to really do the extension, there could be a lot of throwaway at this interchange. And what we're trying to do with the district is avoid throwaway cost here. So we're either going to make provisions for the extension or possibly look at just extending this to the next intersection on the south side for that reason. The other alternative are 2 parallel structures on the outside. What you see here are the 2 middle structures which are the direct connectors. The difference here is these direct connectors are coming in on the left side, and we're keeping the elevated structures, which are the main lanes on the outside, as independent or individual structures going through I-69. Another element to these improvements along the corridor is the interchange that's going to be proposed for State Highway 84 Hashar. So here we're also looking at an interchange with the reconnectors feeding into the main lanes. So this is going to provide connectivity going all the way to 59. And by putting these direct connectors, is going to facilitate and help the traffic flow better coming from I-69, providing another option for the trucking industry to be able to get to their destination on 1472. Here's our contact information. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And before we get to that, let me also say, we are also having a second public meeting next month on the 17th at the Barbara Baskin Community Center. So, is there any questions that you may have?
Thank you for your insight. I appreciate that. Maybe I missed it or something. You talked about congestion, which I think is obviously 1472 is very much congested. I know you just said something about a Chart Parkway. Have you done the numbers on how much the Chart Parkway is going to help?
Yes.
How much Vallecillo is going to help? How much the extension is going to help? Is there any of that was taken into consideration?
Yes. when we run the traffic numbers, we can do the analysis, we're using the MPO model. The MPO model has all future projects that have already been approved into the model. So any future projects like Seal, Hashar, for example, are already included in the model. So all of that has already been taken into account. What has not been taken into account is the extension. And that's why we did this further analysis, right? How much traffic would that extension take off of 69 and 35? And by that, relieving traffic along 1472 because of the queuing. So one of the things that we did try to do, one of the goals of this whole project was to minimize the right-of-way. That was our directive from the very beginning from Mr. Gonzalez's staff. Reduce the right-of-way as much as we can. And we've tried to do that, right? So, you know, give you that example between 69 and Killam. We are gonna need some right-of-way, particularly at the intersections, because you have to add additional turning lanes. But we did try to minimize it. In some of that area, we are staying within the existing right-of-way. On the north end of Killam, we're gonna need additional 60 feet of right-of-way. So that's, yeah, we took all that into account.
Very good, thank you.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you for your work and for this explanation. I think you laid it out very clearly there. I was surprised to see the new additions at the end on the improvements to the I-69. I know we didn't talk about that at the public hearing, but I do agree that it is much needed. You know, there is a big bottleneck point there existing now, and I'm glad to see all the congestion that this corridor has on paper with numbers and that's been studied, and it shows really the need for it. And I appreciate that TxDOT, you all worked on the plan, and everybody in this room that has worked on making, you know, trying to make Mines Road a better corridor, and FM 1472 and policy committee for always pushing. I think that, you know, this corridor is finally getting the attention that it needed.
We are gonna be showing this at the public meeting, the extension. So again, we didn't show it in the first because we weren't there yet. You know, we went back and looked at the numbers, did some more studies on it, and determined that that was a very viable solution to the problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
We can send the video out, also, we can email it out to the board members. We do get a link for that, we'll send that out.
All right. Letter D, TxDOT project updates.
Thank you, Mayor. As always, we're gonna have the updates on construction from Mr. Jose Vargas, but there's gonna be a follow-up presentation on a traffic signal optimization project that was recently done. So after Mr. Vargas, there'll be another brief presentation.
All right, thank you.
He has a little.
It's frozen. I see it up there. I don't see it on my screen.
I can just run it like that.
Been too many presentations today. Are you able to run it like that? Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, Jose Vargas. So I'm gonna present the status of the active construction projects that we have here in the Laredo office. Again, starting with a slide on the brief overview. So we are running about $907 million on active projects. We have about 24. And again, the scope of the projects we have from full reconstruction of system bridges, reconstruction to industry standards, safety and illumination projects, and our preventive maintenance contracts such as overlays, main inlays, and seal coats.
So let me see if it works. I wanna do something different. So this is drone footage for the US 59 project. I'll be running the video as I guess provide the status. So the investment for this project is 344. It was awarded to James Construction Group. We are a little bit over 25% complete. And as you can see there, we are starting to put some hot mix. That's in preparation to start doing concrete pavement on what is going to be the northbound frontage road. They're continue prepping subgrade, placing base. Earlier in the video, I don't know if you noticed, there's already some retaining walls. There you can see it, some retaining walls being constructed in preparation to where are going to be the future ramps and close to the intersection overpasses. Achar, again, have a video for you all. Investment is $122 million, percent complete. We're about 34% on that project. It's roughly 8 miles, and expected completion date is fall 2027. So this is a little bit longer. We concentrated on the three bridges, Sombrerito, Cuervo, and an unnamed tributary. So the bridge work continues, placing beam, deck panels, and last week we started actually placing concrete for the final riding surface at one of the bridges. Right. 359 widening. We are about 57% complete. Expected completion summer of 2026. We continue working on extending drainage structures, and we are hauling base again in preparation to reconstruct what is going to be the other side of the highway. Total investment for this project was $50 million. Lomas del Sur, we have an update here. We have a confirmed groundbreaking ceremony. Invitations are going to be sent by our PIO, Raul Leal. The date for the groundbreaking is June 18, and roundabout that week we also expect to start the work there on Lomas del Sur. Again, the investment for this project is $50 million, and it runs from Lomas del Sur all the way to SH359. Pretty much is the concrete barrier in the middle, right? That's why the limits are that long. SH255 rehabilitation. Currently, the contractor is working on where are going to be the future passing lanes, and then after that, we're gonna come back and retreat the entire surface and start placing new hot mix. So right now, we are at 11% complete, and again, it's about 6 miles starting from IH 35 going towards the west side. We also have, I included this project here. I know you mentioned traffic signal and safety, so I want to be more specific this time. This project is tentative to start on October 2025 and end on summer of 2026. It's a $2.3 million contract that was awarded to Levy Company, and it's going to include Cuatro Vientos. We're going to install illumination on Cuatro Vientos from Anganaheim to Cielito Lindo. And also in this contract, we have the signalized intersection of Riverbank at the IH-69 frontage road. More on safety projects. This one is still active. New traffic signal at McPherson and Alta Vista Road. Alta Vista Drive. We're also dropping some illumination at SH359 from US 83 to the Loop 20 intersection. We completed the new traffic signal at 1472 at Vidal Cantu, alongside with the one at International Boulevard and Woodridge. We also completed the installation of the new traffic signal there at 1472 and 3338. And we also completed the cable battery installation from Cielito Lindo to Espejo Molina in South Laredo at US 83 South. this would complete my status. Again, like always, help us end the streak, and I don't know if you have any comments or questions.
All right, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there's just one more brief presentation. Texas Traffic Safety Division.
Good afternoon, Rafael Guzman, Director of Transportation Operations for the Laredo District. And just to give you a little brief background on this project, in conversations with the city, and as you know, the Mines Road traffic signals, we partner with the city on their maintenance and operation. So in conversations with them, we wanted to make sure that at least, for a short term, we want to make sure that all the signals are operating as efficient as possible, right? So this is more of a short-term solution. I know NTEC presented, more the long term, but at least what we have now, we want to make sure that it is operating as efficiently as possible. And that's why the reason that we hired Jack from ATG DCCM as a consultant to do the study and implement these changes. The project is completed, so he's here to present the results of the study.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like Rafa said, my name's Jack Schick with ATG DCCM. I'm here to talk about the timing, traffic signal timing optimization we did on FM 1472. It must be FM 1472 day. So for a brief introduction, Roger stole a lot of my thunder on his presentation, but our project, we were tasked with developing optimized traffic signal timings from Fletcher Lane up to FM 3338. And you can see kind of the map of where we had intersections along the corridor. So we developed traffic signal timings for 16 intersections, and we developed those for an average weekday AM, weekday midday, and weekday PM peak period. We collected traffic data throughout the corridor, developed our traffic volumes, and we calibrated and modeled our timings in order to meet those locations. And then again, the objective was to increase the amount of coordination between the traffic signals and reduce travel times on FM 1472.
Mayor, can I ask him a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you go back real quick?
Yes.
The weekday AM peak period, what times are those?
I'm going to show that on
You
the
are?
slide.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
So like I said, we did traffic data collection, 24-hour counts. You can see that. That's the graph on the right side of the slide. Kind of shows how the traffic builds up during the day. That AM peak is 8:15 to 9:15. And then it drops off slightly, not a lot. And then the midday peak is about 1:30 to 2:30, and then the PM is 5:30 to 6:30. So we obtained 24-hour counts. We did turning movement counts with every intersection along the corridor. Looked at the existing traffic signal timings, which we obtained from City of Laredo. And we also looked at some origin destination data as well. We performed field observations, looking at existing geometry, existing intersection operations, to make sure that our models that we developed were an accurate representation of what is actually happening on the corridor. And then we performed some travel time runs. You can see there's a synopsis of that in the table. We're getting, a travel time run is from one end of the corridor to the other, and it should be at about in the 7 to 8 minute range with no congestion. If you were traveling about the speed limit along the road, the speed limit actually drops as you go from north to south, and it's variable throughout the corridor. But you're seeing, in the AM peak, travel times of 10 to 13 minutes, and then the PM peak, you're 12 to 29 minutes, which kind of matches what Roger was kind of showing earlier. So there's a lot of congestion. There's a lot of stop delay that you can see where there's a lot of stop and go traffic along the corridor, north and southbound. And then the existing, we also performed capacity analysis based on highway capacity manual. We noted that there's a lot of intersections that are operating at a level sort of E and F. So in developing the traffic signal timings, the first step that we did was we looked at grouping these intersections along the corridor. So we came up with 3 groups. Group 1 is from Verde Boulevard to FM 3338. And like they said in the previous presentation, these intersections at Vidal Cantu and 3338 were just opened. These intersections kind of sit off. There's a pretty good distance between Pan American Boulevard and Verde Boulevard, so it made sense. It was a natural break to have these intersections operate as a group by themselves. The most congested piece of the corridor is between Pan American Boulevard and the I-69 interchange. And so we decided to group those intersections together because they're pretty closely spaced and they had very similar cycle length needs. And then group 3 is south of I-69. It includes 5 signals. And the traffic really drops down south of I-69 under the existing conditions. So we were able to come up with common cycle lengths for each of the groups. So a cycle length is if you run all of the various phases of the intersection one time through, that's the cycle length. And in order to coordinate the traffic signals, we need to maintain the same cycle length at each intersection within each group. And the longer the cycle length is, the length of the cycle is dependent on the amount of traffic and the number of phases at each intersection. So longer cycle lengths mean you have larger amounts of traffic and longer splits because you need to serve that traffic. So signal group 1 up on the north end, we're able to run 120 to 180 seconds. Signal 2 group in the middle, you can see those have the highest cycle lengths, 160 to 180 seconds. And then this is really driven by that large amount of truck traffic that you have along this corridor. It's extremely heavy truck volumes and they take a long time to get going and get up to speed and really start to clear the intersection. That's one of the reasons for the really long cycle lengths. And then you can see group 3 where the traffic volumes really drop and you don't have as much truck traffic. We're able to reduce that down to 100 seconds and make those a little bit more responsive. So like I said, we use common cycle lengths at each intersection within the group. So once we had done that, we determined the intersection splits and offsets, and we looked at making sure all the yellow and all red times were good, all the walk and pedestrian clearance times were okay, and then we developed those. We provided those to the city of Laredo, and the city of Laredo implemented those in the field. And then just a couple of months ago, back in March, we had a couple of crews down, and we were performing in-field fine-tuning, driving up and down the corridor, making sure everything was working correctly, and making minor adjustments as was needed throughout the corridor. So what were the results of the project? We did accomplish some improved coordination between the traffic signals, and we reduced the travel times pretty good. The bandwidth efficiency, that's just a really fancy engineering term for how much of the cycle are you getting through multiple signals on the green, right? And so before it was kind of timed, all of the intersections were timed together, and by breaking it up into the various groups, we were able to get better coordination between signals. So you're able to get through all of group 1 and then all of group 2 and all of group 3. You may not get through the entire corridor altogether.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yes.
Those cycle lengths are adjusted manually, or is there some automation to it?
There's some automation to it. So we give the intersection some parameters. We tell it that the total cycle length needs to be, say, 180 seconds. But usually what happens if there's not a demand on the side street, it'll drop that off and give that time back to the major. So we designated the north and southbound on FM 1472 as the coordinated movements. So any extra time for where phases gap out because there's not traffic is given back to those movements.
All right, okay, thank you.
And then the big one is you can see the travel time comparison. In the AM peak, we were able to reduce those travel times anywhere from 3 to 4%, trying to get closer to that 7 to 8 to 9 minute range. And then the PM peak, we accomplished a pretty good being able to reduce the northbound travel time by about a quarter, and then we were able to cut the southbound travel time almost in half, from about 29 minutes to 15 minutes. And these are averages of actual travel times that our field crews did, 3 runs in each direction during the peak periods. So, and then with that, I'll open up to any other questions anyone has.
All right, any other questions? No? Go ahead.
Mayor, if I may, so Jack, are there any, I guess you guys were looking at it just strictly from an operations perspective, right? Signal timing and stuff. So are there any opportunities, I guess, to utilize existing, at some of these intersections where we can, possibly do dual lefts or things like that may, help get more of that queue out of that, away from the intersections, right? One of the things that I've noticed, and I think Rafael has noticed as well, or I've discussed it with him, is some of our left turning bays, may need to be extended just to allow or not block that inside through lane. So is that, do we have an idea how much that would, improve the operation?
I mean, we didn't specifically look at that kind of thing. Our charge was more like come up with a timing plan that we can implement in the field with the current configuration. We are working on a final report for this, so we can look at those kind of things and just, hey, maybe change this from a through lane to a through left lane in order to help get some extra capacity for left turns and things like that.
Okay.
Mayor,
But we didn't specifically look at
Yes,
that.
go ahead.
just to piggyback on that question, because when about 4 years ago, you all had come up with that turnaround model that was rejected by a lot of people. It's called the Super Street model, and it looked at turnarounds at the intersection and eliminating left-hand turns and things like that. And I think it's important for a timing study to also include possible improvements to those intersections in those terms, because I know I can think of 2 intersections right now that would definitely benefit from a dual left-hand turn versus a straight only and one left. So I think if we could, I don't know if there's a way to modify like what the scope of what you were looking at or how that would happen, but I can tell you as somebody that drives the corridor, the timing is still an issue. I don't know, I could see how you're justifying it, but there is a really heavy congestion point, and I know it just has to do with a lot of vehicles being on the road and things like that, but it just seems like you're waiting. I can tell you from one light to the other, it's only about a few blocks. It takes about 10, 15, 20 minutes just to get through. So, and that is specifically from Verde Light to Killam, that's a very, very hard to get through corridor. And I don't know what we can do other than like the vertical model, but is there something in the timing for that?
So for the timing, not necessarily. This timing can only kind of take it so far, right? And then you need some extra capacity at the intersections. And what our kind of charge was to actually come up with timing plans that could run in the field. Now, if you want to make changes to the existing configuration of the intersections, that would probably also require changes to the phasing or timing of the lights as well. And we just haven't done that modeling. We weren't charged to, so.
All right, thank you very much. Next is director's comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll be brief. We've got several presentations. But, I wanted to start off, but I didn't mention when the micro transit item came up, just wanted to acknowledge Eddie Bernal on the MPO team, Planner 3. He was the project manager for the MPO for that project.
All right.
Did a great job. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you very much.
And then, our transportation alternative set aside call for projects. It's open through May 30th, so we'll be closing that on May 30th, and then we'll be evaluating the applications and eventually bring those to you at a later date. Also, May is National Bike Month, so we did hold proclamation with the City of Laredo in conjunction with our Active Transportation Committee. So thank you, Mayor, for proclaiming May as National Bike Month in Laredo. Also, our Texas Transportation Commission meetings. Today they had a meeting this morning, but on the June meeting, it's going to be on June 20th. When we sent out the calendar invite, they had a different date, so we'll be updating that. I believe this will be the meeting where they'll be presenting the draft Unified Transportation Program. So I think it'd be a good idea to have as many people as possible there to speak in support of the UTP.
What day is that?
June 20th, I believe it's Friday, the day after Juneteenth. So we have a holiday on Juneteenth.
June 20th, at 10 o'clock in Austin?
It's usually at 10 a.m., so they haven't posted the time yet, but it's usually at 10 a.m.
It
in
usually is
Austin. So I'll be there, but yeah, if anybody else is interested in going, it'd be a good idea. And,
Long weekend?
yeah, the upcoming meetings for the MPO, we have our Active Transportation Committee virtually on May 28th, Technical Committee June 10th, and Policy Committee on June 18th at 1:30. I know they mentioned there's going to be a groundbreaking for Lomas del Sur that day as well, so I assume that'll be in the morning. But that's all I have for my comments. I don't know if there's any questions.
You said June 20th?
June 20th is what's posted right on the Texas Transportation Commission website.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, Mayor, just one more thing. The 18th is the policy committee meeting, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Next is communications.
Yeah, that's just a standing item of their saying communications from the board, the other side.
There's none?
No communication?
Great. Motion to adjourn.
Motion? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned, thank you.
Thank you.